are calling it a historical EU-UK reset, a kind of halfway back to folding into the EU family, and the opposition are hitting on that. Others will agree it's the pragmatic response as the Trump White House stops writing checks for Europe's defense, and there's a huge opportunity to participate in defense contracting. The Labour government in the last local elections were humiliated as citizens lose trust, and more importantly, the economy is biting hard. Turning the page and writing a new chapter is great rhetoric, but this will not significantly tone down the headwinds, as deals like this, to be signable, have to come with pros and cons for both sides. Hello, welcome back to Global Business Insights, where we look closer at headlines, moving markets, and offer perspectives on the business environment. So what was agreed at Lancaster House and what does it mean? Three main pillars on fishing. For example, a new deal keeps the status quo of European Union boats having access to UK waters until 2038. Boris Johnson says it extends the time of plundering of British seas. British holidaymakers will be able to use e-gates when travelling around the EU, and it will be easier to trade food across the UKEU border. And a new security pact will also allow British defence contractors to access EU funds for defence contracts and defence development. British Meat Processors Association (BMPA) strongly welcomed the announcement, which reduces the mountain of paperwork to prove compliance with EU sanitary and phytosanitary controls, previously costing business a fortune with little added value. There is easier mobility, like I said, for holidaymakers. EU citizens can use e-gates in the UK and vice versa, but there is no obligation on individual countries nor any firm timescale for when it could happen. Also, the UK and the EU have agreed to cooperate further on a youth experience scheme. Much still has to be detailed out in terms of execution. Is this enough to save Starmer at the next elections? Perhaps not. Indeed, what has been agreed so far only dismantles a small fraction of the trade barriers erected post-Brexit. On prices, while retailers like the deal, it's not clear if savings in costs will be passed on, but this potentially limits the trend of future price increases as far as goods are concerned. The good news is that attention is being given to the economy. This is the second deal to be agreed in less than 2 weeks after signing a deal with the United States earlier. Kemi Badenoch, who heads the Conservatives, can't be expected to hail this win, as she calls it, taking the UK backwards. My take that the discussion took place at all has to be a win for Starmer. Now to other stories. The S&P 500 inched up to bring its winning streak to 6 days. Yesterday's gains were marginal, but still add to what has been a rapid and sharp rebound for stocks over the past 5 weeks. The S&P 500 is now just 3% from its record high, and investors even shrugged off, apparently, the downgrade of the US government's credit by Moody's ratings. The gains continued despite lingering uncertainty around the impact of tariffs on the economy and worries about a potential US recession. Coinbase yesterday became the first cryptocurrency exchange to join the Standard & Poor's 500 index, marking a pivotal moment for the digital assets industry. The inclusion on the S&P 500 also was a point of pride for Coinbase, which consumers use to buy, sell, transfer, and store various cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin. US long-term borrowing costs jumped to their highest level since late 2023 after Moody's stripped the country's AAA credit rating, and progress on a budget bill fueled more concerns about the government's mounting debt burden. Yields on 30-year US Treasuries rose as much as 0.14 percentage points to 5.04% yesterday before coming down a bit, exceeding a peak reached during the tariff sell-off last month and putting the country's long-term borrowing costs at their highest point since November 2023. General Motors has informed employees and dealers for its China export business, that was on Thursday last week in China, that it would stop shipping vehicles to China from the United States. This is as the US and China continue their discussions on tariffs and other trade issues. It's being reported that Nippon Steel plans to invest $14 billion in the US, that's in US Steel's operations, including up to $4 billion in a new steel mill if the administration gives the okay on its bid for the iconic US company. Details show Nippon will plow in $11 billion into US Steel's infrastructure through 2028, which includes $1 billion in a greenfield site expected to grow by $3 billion over following years. French President Emmanuel Macron has said this year's Choose France Business Summit is set to secure 20 billion euros, that's about $22.4 billion of new investment with projects in the defense, energy and industrial sectors. The Choose France Summits, which will hold at the opulent Palace of Versailles, a must attend for the global corporate elite, have been credited for a turnaround in past investor perceptions of France. Despite the foreign investment inflows into France, Macron has not been able to stop French companies from making huge investments abroad. An example is Sanofi's plan to spend at least $20 billion to boost manufacturing in the United States, a move that annoyed French politicians. Regeneron, an American pharmaceutical company, agreed to buy 23andMe, a bankrupt genetic testing firm, for $256 million. Winning demand for 23andMe's genetic analysis kits led the company to file for bankruptcy in March. Regeneron said it would comply with 23andMe's existing privacy policies and share its data plans with a court-appointed ombudsman. Profits at Qatar Airways were 7.85 billion reals, that's about $2.15 billion in the 2024 financial year. That's a rise of about 28% from the previous year. Healthy demand in the Gulf has helped Qatar Airways to release what it called its strongest set of financial results in its history. Last week, Qatar Airways ordered 160 jets from Boeing during Trump's tour of the Gulf. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has planned to meet with Trump as part of efforts to mend fences and also offers an olive branch to Elon Musk, who claims whites are discriminated against in the country. Trump has taken aim at South Africa during his second term, citing disapproval of its land reform policy and of its genocide case against Israel before the International Court of Justice. Still in South Africa, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana is due to return to Parliament May 21st for a third attempt at passing South Africa's budget after disputes with coalition partners over plans to increase VAT revenue. The focus will be on how he plugs a 75 billion rand, that's about $4.1 billion budget hole, as polls see a narrow deficit in the following fiscal year, 4.4%, but still well above the Treasury's last projection of 3.8%. Analysts also expect a projection of accelerating economic growth as a likely option to justify an increase in tax revenue to balance the books. Huawei launched 2 new laptop models yesterday, the first sold with its own Harmony operating system in a bid to take on Western big tech rivals and show resilience. This is as the United States seeks to limit its access to crucial chips. The House of Representatives in the U.S. has already advanced Trump's big bill, a massive tax cut and border security package, out of a key House committee in a rare Sunday night vote. The bill, labeled the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, passed the House Budget Committee by a vote of 17 to 16 after a few Republican deficit hawks changed their vote following commitments on spending cuts. Republicans remain divided over major aspects of the bill, including cuts to Medicaid and limits on the deductibility of state and local taxes. Analysts say the bill would also add $3 trillion to $5 trillion to the nation's debt over the next decade. House Speaker Mike Johnson is pushing for the chamber to pass the legislation and send it on to the Senate before the May 26th U.S. Memorial Day holiday. Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta President Raphael Bostic says the Fed is on pace to do only a single quarter point rate cut in 2025, which undercuts current rate market bets of at least 2 cuts by December and 4 total rate cuts priced in by the second half of 2026. And on central banks, later today, we will get a decision from the Nigeria Central Bank of Nigeria, that's the Monetary Policy Committee, on interest rates. That will be on conclusion of the policy meeting that will be ending today. Markets hope for a modest cut, but may get this time only a strong signal of easing and a hold on rates. We have to wait and see how that decision unfolds. UK Chancellor Reeves says the next UK trade deal will be with Gulf states, adding that after deals with India, US and Europe, the UK was now in a better place on trade than any other country in the world. Australia's central bank cut its policy rate by 25 basis points to the lowest in 2 years as inflation concerns in the country continue to recede. The Reserve Bank of Australia cut the benchmark rate to 3.85%, its lowest since May 2023. The People's Bank of China trimmed the 1-year loan prime rate to 3% from 3.1% and the 5-year loan prime rate to 3.5% from 3.6%. This was the first reduction in rates since the central bank's 25 basis points cut in October as Beijing intensifies efforts to shore up its economy. Crude oil flat as traders gauged signs on ending the Ukraine-Russia war and of return of Russian oil. Crude rebounded after easing in the trade war between the US and China boosted risk sentiment. Any indication of reduction of sanctions on Russia or Iran could potentially add more barrels to a global market that is already facing a glut. This as OPEC Plus returns shuttered production. One can still expect a lot of volatility given the mix of factors with risks tilting to lowering prices. U.S. drug maker Pfizer signed a licensing agreement worth about $6 billion with the Chinese biopharmaceutical company 3S Bio Inc. for development, manufacturing, and commercialization of a drug which could be used to treat certain types of cancer and tumors. The drug candidate, which is being evaluated for non-small cell lung cancer, metastatic colorectal cancer, and gynecological tumors, is currently undergoing multiple clinical trials in China. 3S Bio plans to initiate the first phase 3 trial in China this year. Asia-Pacific markets inched up as investors digest the Reserve Bank of Australia's policy rate decision as well as the listing of the world's largest battery manufacturer, Contemporary Amperex Technology. Shares of the world's largest battery maker, Contemporary Amperex Technology, rose over 11% in their Hong Kong trading debut today. Shares traded at 292 Hong Kong dollars a piece on the stock exchange pre-market, a healthy premium over the IPO price of $263. That's Hong Kong dollars per share. Well, that's it on this edition of Global Business Insights. Thanks for watching. This is Bode Oshosami. Bye-bye.